right. So we'll jump right into it. How did you two meet?
We met in Washington, D.C. I went to grad school after graduating from Olivet at George Washington University in D.C. And I was working my way through school in the hotel business. And Judy grew up in Georgia and supported a senator from Georgia who won, and he brought her to Washington, D.C. to help run his office there. And so a mutual friend of ours who was in the hotel business, actually at a competing hotel, is the one that introduced us. So that's how we met.
And that's been 38 years, so 37 years.
So I know, Mike, you went to Olivet, but why come back here to live and to work and raise a family?
It's a good question. I always tell people that I got every dime's worth out of my education here, so I did everything I ever wanted to do. I went everywhere that people were going. And so that experience was really such an important part of my life that I always felt like I wanted to give back. But quite frankly, there were a lot of people here when I was a student who came back after they retired, and the Seldons and the Thompsons and other people that had graduated from here in the 30s and 40s, Laura Verplank and people like that came back here to work. And so I always thought I'd come back when I was older. Coming here at the age of 40 was something that I hadn't planned, but the college was going through a lot of turmoil at that point, and the couple of friends of ours reached out to us and said that they felt like the college needed us. And part of the reason for coming was that the hotel restaurant business that I sort of fell into while I was working through grad school and then stayed in that business for 16 years was a great business to be in when I was young and single, but it was a really bad business to be in when I wanted to get married and have children, because essentially hotels never closed, and so it's almost like you have to be married to a hotel in order to run it. So I was ready for a career change, and have that opportunity here wasn't something that I anticipated, but it happened. And then, quite frankly, we thought when we moved here that this would be my opportunity, and Judy had worked mostly in politics, so we actually thought she would end up working in Lansing in something political. But there was a woman who was an interim president here at the time we came who hired me, and she met Judy and spent about 2 hours with her and offered her a job on the spot. So Judy working here wasn't going to be originally part of the deal, but it ended up being for both of us. And so it was a great situation. We were living in the Raleigh area of North Carolina at that time, and we were each driving an hour in different directions to and from work. And then when we had our first son, Doug, the daycare was yet in another direction. And so we were just commuting these ridiculous distances. And by moving here, we walked to work, and I've had a 2-block commute now for 33 years, so it's kind of hard to beat that.
So from your first experiences here at Olivet, both of you, what do you think from then to now, what have been some of the biggest changes?
When I started working for the interim president, we also had a woman board chair. And so it was first time in history you had a female board chair and a female president. And it was very exciting, sort of. And when I agreed to hire on, I sat down and read the bylaws of the organization, which is it's kind of a good thing to do. And the language said the board would be made up of 31 men. Well, look how old those bylaws probably were. And so I got the two ladies to promise me that they would have those rewritten. The interim president was just going to be here for a year. And I said, promise me you will have these edited. So they say 31 people. And they, I think, were unaware that that the language was that sexist. And so one of the judges on the board rewrote the board bylaws and removed any gender, made them gender neutral. So I thought that was pretty great, and it came when the two women were in charge. That was kind of neat, and it was Judge Bledsoe.
Mm-hmm. Great man. We were here for the formation of the Olivet plan, which is the academic plan that is in place now. It was a big change over what had been here prior to that. So that was a big change. And then I guess I'd like to single out Dave Cutler for all the generosity that he's had here, because when I think back over the 33 years that we've been here, I can't think of any individual who has done more to change the student experience here than Dave Cutler has. The athletic facility here back when I was a student and when we first came to work here was literally a very small cement block building on the football field, next to the football field, which was basically a locker room and some showers, and that was it. There wasn't even a place.
No facilities for women.
No facilities for visiting teams, nothing, right? And
the visiting teams used the high school, I think.
Well, or maybe they would come up here, I'm not sure. But that was one of his first major gifts here. And over the years, he's given so much money that has really changed Olivet for the better for our students, rather than just building something that he wanted. It was things that students wanted and needed. And so I would say that if I were to single out one individual, he would be the one that I would give credit to for making the biggest changes here over the time that we've been here.
Perhaps second to Mr. Cutler is Mr. Gillette, who built the system of apartments. There is a phase 2 that is preserved in plans and blueprints, but has not been brought to fruition. Gillette was a Kappa Sig. I was the Kappa Sig advisor some years ago, so that's why I put that. And Mr. Cutler was an Adelphic.
Is an Adelphic.
Is an Adelphic, sorry.
So a lot of stuff has changed. What has stayed the same in your time here?
I think the personal aspect of it. I went to the University of Georgia. How about them dogs? That's a state law, you have to say that. I think I saw my academic advisor twice. I can't remember his name. It was big and impersonal. It's usually why you pledged, so you had a small group to associate with. And yet Mike, before we moved here, would tell me all about his academic advisor, that he had debates in his house at night with the political science majors and took them to lectures and all this stuff. And when we moved here, he would still go see him and ask his advice on things. And so that personal involvement in people's lives, I think, is just marvelous.
Yeah, I would say that the intimacy of the community and one-on-one instruction, that it's very unusual. I mean, my job is half teaching and half service, and to have a school where your class size is never going to be more than about 24 students. I mean, that's really remarkable. And because I teach religious studies, I've had classes that have only had 2 or 3 students, upper level classes, and most schools wouldn't allow those to run, but here they do. And so you get an opportunity to get to know students in a way that would never happen at a university. So I think that's the thing that stays true here and has stayed true for the 180 years that Olivet's been here.
Throughout your respective careers, have either of you had any accomplishments that you feel like you're most proud of?
Oh, for me? I thought about this the other day, that my 16 years in the hotel business are sort of forgotten because it was a different time in my life, and nothing related to what I do here at Olivet. But I actually hold up some of my work in that industry as things that I think are some of the most important things that I've done in my life. And it was because essentially every hotel that I managed, I promoted persons of color into management positions for the first time. I promoted women from what were hourly positions into salaried management positions. I opened a Hilton in Durham, North Carolina that was built to do a lot of business with Duke University. And I distinctly remember that we needed a sales manager for convention sales, and interviewed a young woman who was a woman of color. And I decided to offer her that job, and I found out that she was the first person of color ever hired in that entire community in that role. And so I'm immensely proud of that, and it's not that I did it to make some political statement or trying to make a name for myself. I did it strictly because those people deserved the jobs that they were given. And those were lessons that I learned here as a student. So I'm very proud of that, and something that's sort of forgotten from my past, but it's something that I do think about and I'm proud of.
In 2000, Laura Barlin Moss and I founded the LGBT and Allies group here. It's gone through some, it's morphed some, now it's LGBTQ. It's had many names. For a while it was the GSA, and that was too close to SGA, so they voted another name change. But it has lasted this long, and it's very student-driven, but we were asked to help start it, and I'm very proud of that. We've had some wonderful, wonderful speakers and programs. One was Judy Shepard, Matthew Shepard's mother. This is the anniversary of his death, of that terrible incident. So I'm really proud of having helped that get on its feet and provide a place. I think we all knew in college people who later came out, and we wondered about what their life had been at Georgia and here, and what kind of life that would be. So it's wonderful to see the normalization of that, and the acceptance and the love that can come in those groups. So I'm really proud of having founded that with Ms. Moss.
You've both spent a large portion of your lives interacting with students and younger people. So is there anything in particular that you guys felt like you wanted to provide students with? Like, is there something you were trying to give them in any way?
For a long time we were, well, you still work in international student work, but I used to as well. And for a long time the Hosford House was the International Student House. And we were right across the street. And if they needed something or were kind of homesick, they could just run across the street and see us and sit down and watch TV or play with our dog or play with our kids. And I just think when you live nearby, you can be a landing pad for students who may be lonely. And in the case of international students, their homes are halfway around the world many times. So it was always, to me, a wonderful thing that students knew they could stop here.
I would say two things. That one of my favorite things to do here is to take students to places they've never been before. And so cultural awareness trips are something that I think are part of my favorite part of my job. Every trip I've done, I've taken students that have not only never been out of the country, but have never even been on an airplane before, to places as far away as South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Iceland, Peru, Cuba, and
interesting history.
so I really believe in experiential learning, which means that rather than sitting in a classroom and just giving boring lectures that students are going to forget about after they take the quiz, taking them somewhere and showing them what you're talking about. And I maintain that that's knowledge that will be retained for a lifetime as opposed to something that will be forgotten after the test. And then in the same light, our service program is designed specifically to teach our students about poverty in other parts of the world and in other settings outside of South Central Michigan. So we assume that most people that come here already know what Rust Belt poverty looks like in our community. So we deliberately take them to places where the poverty is different than that. I think that in the same way, I think that that's the best kind of a learning environment you can have. That's why we call it service learning as opposed to just service, because it isn't just the grunt work of doing manual labor. It's also a learning experience to expose students to things that they probably wouldn't see any other way.
And not only the economics, but the music, the art, how people talk. And realize too, though, that even the art or the music or the dancing or the speech may be different. Parents are a lot the same all over the world. Young people a lot have the same hopes around the world.
So were there people in your life specifically that you feel like had major impacts on you becoming, the people you ended up being?
Yeah, very much so. My parents were both very generous people who gave money and time to help people that were in need. I grew up in a church family, so our church experience was certainly part of that. And then I was a debater, so I had a woman who was my debate coach in high school, who was maybe the first really strong woman in my life who kind of went up against the big boys and fought for our program and was a very important person in my life. And then coming here, there were some professors that were immensely important to me. Guy named Bob Fisher taught in political science, and he was just someone who had the most unique ability to bring groups of people together for meals and conversation and debate about very interesting, timely topics. When I was a student here, it was the height of Watergate, so there was a lot of arguing going on about that, but in a friendly way, not in a you could argue all day long and then go have a beer together at Garfield Lake, at the end of the evening.
You didn't have to hate the other person.
That kind of an experience. And then seeing faculty that graduated from here who came back here, the Seldons and the Thompsons were people that I was particularly close to here, and they were a role model for my work here as well.
My parents as well, and my folks, as far as my political activity, I remember going with them to vote when I was a little child. And my dad he had a silkscreen business, and he would print people's T-shirts and bumper stickers and stuff as a gift in kind, and they did a lot of work in political campaigns. The lady next door to me was the first woman I knew in politics. She was on our city council, and even though that's grassroots and the issues are not earth-shaking, they're still important to your community. And I watched her very carefully. She was a wonderful person, and again, it wasn't necessarily our political party, but she was articulate and very polished, and I really enjoyed shadowing her and watching her, and that influenced me. And I have always worked in campaigns. They're fun, and you meet a lot of people. And I try to encourage young people to get involved. And even if it's going around just putting up yard signs for a candidate, you're going to meet like-minded people, and it's going to be just a lot of fun, and you can bring about change. So, and then I think we're both pretty adventurous as far as moving from North Carolina up here, and I really have enjoyed it. I don't miss the humidity.
Sort of building off some of the answers you gave there, like talking about being able to debate with people and still be friendly. And are there any parts of, like, you know, as you've seen culture and everything develop, do you think there's anything that, like, we are losing currently that we used to have? Like anything that you feel like we're missing as a society?
I think we've politicized things that don't need to be political. Judy, having worked in Washington professionally in politics, talks about the changes in Washington, D.C. over the years. That it used to be that when someone was elected to the House of Representatives or to the Senate, that they bought a house in the Washington, D.C. area. They moved there with their families. Their children all went to school together. They all knew each other. They socialized with each other. And it didn't matter what party it was. It just was that was what people did. And then in the 1990s, there was an effort to start saying that people shouldn't live in Washington, that they should live back home in their district or in their state, which then caused people to not socialize with people outside of their political party. And now it's really to a point where people, it seems to me, are no longer willing to be on opposite sides politically. They have to demonize each other, and that's the part of this that frightens me. That being a debater, someone who loves debate, very comfortable with people having opinions that are different than mine. I teach religion for a living, and so I'm very accustomed to people having different religious views than I do. But this idea of having to demonize people just because they're different than you or they think differently than you, that bothers me, and quite frankly, it scares me, because we're even now to the point where people are politicizing things like education, and that really bothers me. And so when I was a student here, some of the most politically conservative people I knew were intellectuals. Now I hear conservatives speaking out against higher education in ways that I don't really fully understand. So that's what bothers me about the changes that I've seen over the years.
Yes, it isn't just disagreeing. You can't just disagree with somebody. You have to annihilate them. You know, you have to kill your. You know, and it's like, look, you know, this is. I think too, back when we were in and when I worked on the Hill, you felt like everyone. You might not agree with the other person, but you felt like they loved the country too, yeah. And they wanted the best for the country, just like you did. And you didn't see it the same way, but you didn't think they were going to torpedo the country and bring it down and everything. And now this is spoken of just people really believe that the other person hates the country and is going to stamp out the country. And that didn't used to be so. You assumed everybody loved the country. You had different paths getting to success, but you didn't think the other side was a bunch of Satan, a bunch of demons, and you didn't hate them. And there just used to be more civility to having debates. And
I think social media has brought this on, because
has fueled a lot of it.
I deliberately don't use Twitter and things like that, because I'm of the opinion that those services, whatever they are designed specifically to encourage snarky sort of retorts to people rather than intelligent debate. And I drive my Facebook friends crazy because I don't confine a lot of the things that I say on there to the one paragraph that they can read and move on. And you almost always have to click more to see what I write on Facebook, because I just don't think that one or two sentences does justice to really serious issues. So I certainly encourage debate, and I love hearing various points of view. But this kind of snarky, sarcastic stuff that goes back and forth is hurtful, and it's hurtful to our nation too, I think.
And our communities.
Yeah.
Just to our small communities.
Jumping back around. So I asked you some of the things you're most proud of from your careers. In your personal life, what do you feel like you're most proud of?
We have 3 sons. They were a lot of fun. We had one when we moved here who
They
was...
still are a lot of fun.
Oh, they still are. But we had one when we moved here. He was our Tar Heel. He was born in North Carolina. And we got here, we were 38, and lived here a couple of years, and then we thought, oh, we were going to have 2 children, so we better get started. We turned 40 years old, and we said, we got to get started on this second child. Well, because of our advanced age, we had twins. And Mike's folks, my people were deceased in the South, and but Mike's parents lived in Flint, so they were fairly nearby, but it was kind of hair-raising and fun and goofy, and so that was a lot of fun. And one of them, though, took a turn medically at 22 months and stopped talking, and then the eye contact went, and he turned out to be on one of the lowest rungs of the autism ladder. And is nonverbal and low functioning. By the time he was 15, he was 6'6".
13. I think.
13,
Yeah.
and he was pretty hard to wrangle with, and was about 300 pounds. So it was hard to wrangle with him. We don't have special ed in the school system here because it's terribly expensive to maintain a department like that. So our school system partners with Battle Creek, and we had lovely, wonderful teachers all through his years. A special ed in this state goes to age 26, which is a God's blessing. It really is, because they need a lot of routine for many years to teach them. You want to get them as independent as they can, because they're going to have to go on without you. And our sons were a lot of help with him. And one thing that really helped, a lot of times autistic people are very reclusive and they hide, and we just tried something and it really worked out well, because sometimes you can't have a lot of spontaneity with autistic people. It's hard to transition them to another activity, but luckily, we kind of gave him to his brothers, and they tackled him and tumbled around with him and wrestled with him just like a regular guy. And we told them to treat him like a regular guy. And we think that desensitized him to that kind of interaction. And so he really was very funny and had a funny sense of humor, I think, and learned that give and take between brothers. And he is a joy. He still is a joy. And he is in a group home with 2 other men, because I can stand up under his arm. I mean, he's so big that it's tough to wrangle him. So, but he loves his home. And now he's in a place, I think, that if something happened to us, we would be confident that he would be in good shape and be cared for. So that was a challenge, but I was really proud of us, because special children break up a lot of marriages.
Yeah. The divorce rate for couples with special needs children is way over 80%. So
It's terrible.
we were career people who both got so caught up in their careers that we didn't even start dating till we were 30. We didn't get married till we were 34. Had our first child at 37, twins at 40. And so, and then
We were already tired.
to have a special needs son thrown into the mix of all that totally caught us off guard. And sadly, it was at a time when there just really weren't services available in the state of Michigan. We tried to reach out to the state, and those interactions were very negative and almost threatening, and in some cases, and I'm happy, and even insurance wouldn't cover medications for them because there weren't any medications at the time that were specifically for autism, so they would say it's off-label use, and so we were having to pay for all of his medications because they weren't covered by insurance. And so the state of Michigan has come a long way over the time that we've lived here. Because we travel a lot, we've seen some states that do a much better job than Michigan does with this. But the one thing that Michigan does do that we're very proud of is that they let special needs people stay in school until they're 26 years old. And that's very unusual. So that was a huge plus for us. And then we're just really proud that we were able to get through that. It actually, rather than making our marriage fall apart, it actually made us stronger. And we've done all of this in a partnership. And so, I think we both acknowledge we couldn't have done it alone. And many of our friends that have special needs children are women that are having to raise them on their own because the father just wouldn't deal with it or couldn't deal with it and left. That's a very common thing, and we're very proud that that didn't happen with us.
And I think it's important, the two brothers are very sympathetic to people who are underrepresented or impaired, or they are pretty fierce about equal rights for lots of people, whether it's medical or equal rights for marriage equality or underrepresented groups. And I think Tom taught them that.
I'm also proud of the fact that we had 3 sons, and you would think that you would run the risk of having misogynist children because of all the men in the house, but all of our boys have as many female friends as they do have male friends, and they're very comfortable being around everyone, including LGBTQ people. And we, realizing that our children were going to go to a school system that had essentially no students of color, we deliberately hired international students and students of color to babysit here, so from the college. We certainly weren't experts at any of this. We certainly weren't experts at dealing with low-functioning autism, but somehow we got through it, and we're proud that we did. And we tried, I think the thing we do try to do is to reach out to people that have children that are newly diagnosed, because I would say that was maybe the lowest point in our lives when that happened, because there was no one to talk to, there was no one to reach out to, and it was just us. And so we do try to be proactive about that.
So talking about marriage, what has been the key to maintaining a successful marriage?
Well, we really like each other. And we have, I think, good sense of humor is, that goes a long way right there.
And marriages work, and if you don't look at it that way, I think it's more likely to fail. we were so much older when we got married that we were both pretty set in our ways. I remember distinctly that I lived on my own for so many years that I could just come and go and not have to report where I was going or what I was doing. And then all of a sudden somebody started asking me where I was going and what I was doing. And at first I resented that because I thought it was sort of an intrusion into my, personal life or something. But then I came to realize, well, it's because you actually care about what happens to me. And, and I think it's like that we love each other and we're extremely close, but we are different in some ways. We're very much alike in some ways, and we're very different in some ways too. And we've just learned that over the years that we compromise, and even things like color. Judy sees color in a different way than I do. And at first, we were kind of thrown by that because Judy would say, well, that's green, and I would say it was something else. And then we just realized that there's just something about us mechanically that, we see colors in different ways. And so things like what color you're going to paint the living room, we actually, we painted our living room sort of Olivet red, which was pretty bold, but we painted a swatch on the wall and left it for about 6 months and let people comment on it before we actually went the whole way and did it.
It was entertaining too.
Yeah,
it was a conversation starter.
We let people, mostly
Vote,
students,
kind of.
participate in it. Yeah, and that, so. But I really do, as a minister, I do marital counseling, and what I really believe is that you have to talk to each other. You have to learn to compromise with each other. I think that's what the key to a successful marriage is.
And separate bathrooms. No, I'm kidding. No,
That helps.
I'm kidding. And two, we were both in church families. And both of our parents stayed married to each other. My parents were married for 34 years when my dad died. And yours were over 50 years.
Over 50 years.
And so, that gives you like we're going to make it too, and we believe that when you say your vows, and two, being a little older, we had traveled, we had lived on our own, we were kind of ready, we had kind of started our careers and done, been independent, and then wanted somebody by our side. So we were very lucky to find each other, or that Roxanne decided we should meet each other.
Is there any particular legacy you hope to leave behind?
Service is a legacy that I would very much like to see stay here. I think people are surprised that the founders of Olivet talked a lot about service, but in terms of service being part of the curriculum, that really came with the Olivet plan in the early 1990s. And so in a school that's 180 years, it hasn't been here all that many years. And I hope that we've done a good enough job with it that it's a legacy that would continue on into the future.
Yeah, I'm awfully proud of that. I'm also proud of the Women's Board, which is one of the oldest organized women's organizations in the state. And it was formed pretty soon after when we opened because we admitted women, and you had 31 men on the board, and so they didn't know that girls had maybe some needs that they did. So a group of women organized to help the female students. And I guess there were like physical things they helped them with, but later it evolved to being financial aid. And then we extended it to male students and international students. And I've been really proud to be part of that. And I'm a past president too. And we've done a lot of different ways to raise money, and so we could furnish these scholarships. But I've been really proud of the Women's Board, and I hope it carries on, because now you're not seeing people join community groups like that. So we're working hard on how to attract younger faculty and younger members of the community so we can keep assisting students.
All right, last question that I have. Throughout your whole lives and everything, your career, family, what, if you had to pinpoint a takeaway, what would that be?
Faith. I think religious faith.
I think so.
Helps you through so many things, like a special child,
Yeah.
and helps you help your other children, because they only get one childhood. They don't get a do-over because they have a special brother. So I think faith helps you balance everything and do your best to those you love.
I actually say this to couples that I'm going to marry, that the one thing that I can tell you that's absolutely true is that life is as unpredictable as anything could possibly be. So if you think you know just exactly what your life is going to be like and what's going to happen in your life, you're wrong, because there's so many things that just come out of left field somewhere. And so I really think that the key to a happy life and a happy marriage is being prepared for the things that come out of left field that you never could have imagined. And in our own life, even before we were married, we talked about what would we do if our parents became ill and things like that. So we didn't think about twins because there weren't any in our family, and we didn't think about a special needs child because there weren't any of those in our family either. But we had talked through a lot of things before then. And so I would say communication with each other, compromise, being ready for things that come out of left field, and then your faith being the thing that grounds you the most.
Anything else you guys want to add at all?
Well, and keeping a sense of humor.
Yeah,
And looking,
we do.
and knowing that there's going to, and having faith that there is going to be a good outcome.
We've never yelled at each other.
No, we don't.
We just don't. And we're both people that don't like drama, so we try to avoid it as much as we possibly can. Maybe that helps in a relationship too, I think. But
Well, we just don't see that anything's that big enough to fight and scream at each other. You know.
we don't do that.
No,
And so and we never have and never will. And so I think that's a key too.
I do. I think you're right.